Well, let's speak to Francesco Rocca. He's the president of the International Federation of the Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies. Good to have you with us. As we saw in that report, there's 6 million people displaced inside Syria, many of them just struggling to survive on a day-to-day basis. They really are living in grim conditions.
Yes, and we have also to consider that half of them have been displaced more than once. So they are moving from an area to another area, and this creates a more difficult condition to try to alleviate their sufferings after so many years of intense fighting in the country. The Red Cross, the Red Cross and Red Crescent family, in particular, the Syrian Arab Red Crescent, is doing its utmost to reach those in need in the country. Just a few days ago, we were able to have access in Rubgan camp near the border with Jordan after many months of isolation of more than 50,000 people. And we ran a vaccination campaign. We distribute food parcels, clothes, hygiene kits, thousands and thousands. But this is not enough. The situation is in some areas is extremely desperate for the work of humanitarians, and still we have problem of access.
Yeah, and what's troubling about this is that IDPs legally remain under the protection of the government. So technically they are supposed to be protected by the Syrian government, and yet that doesn't seem to be the case at all. If it wasn't for organizations like your own, they would have no help whatsoever.
Listen, the problem is about access, and you know the fragmentation in certain areas is not only about the Syrian government or only about the Syrian government. It's about a chaotic situation that we are living on the ground, because there are areas that are under control of other armed group. Because even according to those who are fleeing, particularly the area in which the fighting is more intense, they go in other areas that maybe is under control of another armed group. So it's about the humanitarian access, and I think that no one in Syria is innocent about giving the opportunity to have full access to those in need, to respect the civilians, to respect the health workers or the humanitarian workers. We lost 70 people. Try to consider that since the beginning of the war, the Red Crescent lost 70 volunteers working in trying to deliver the humanitarian aid to the displaced and the other in needs in the country.
There's now been more than 7 years of war, and as we all know, the impact has been felt hardest on civilians, particularly on the millions of children caught up in this. Do you get frustrated when you see the suffering continue, when you see the progressive rounds of peace talks which seem to not be able to end the conflict in Syria?
Which peace talks, I would answer, because the situation is really frustrating. There is no advance, unfortunately. Sometimes we obtain some truths that gave to the humanitarians to have access, but you are fully right. The situation on the ground is extremely frustrating, because you don't see any goodwill from all parties, and this big failure of the international community in fixing and finding a political solution, because the people on the ground, the civilians, they need, and they do need desperately, a political solution on the ground. I fully agree with you.
And as we are now entering winter, what are the particular challenges that these people are going to be facing, and what do they need to be able to carry on surviving?
Oh, this is the we have passed this in the past years. We are ready to start, and we just started to deliver, of course, blankets, to increase the distribution of clothes, full access to the food. So the food distribution should be granted to all displaced in the country. So again, we are calling it to have a protected and granted humanitarian access for all of them. The problem is not to distribute, but it's to reach and distribute. So we call desperately for having access in all these areas and to respect the role of the humanitarians on the ground.
Francesco Rocca, IFRC, thank you very much indeed. We do appreciate your time there.